I played in a league last night and I did pretty poorly with my deck. The reason being is everyone was playing blue red, prowess burn or just straight burn, and I guess with those decks you kind of break even. But like y'all can imagine, being a Tron player, it is extremely difficult to get ahead of them. So I made some changes to my deck. I lost to Fist, I think, like every game I played against them before this. Or maybe I ended up being able to win 1 out of 3 games. So I made some changes, came back, and we played a game against each other again. And this was the result. Obviously, I'm going to keep this hand here because I can get Tron online on turn 3. Though I have no idea what I'm going to do after that. But let's see, I ended up taking out all 4 copies of Doubling Season out of my deck. I might end up putting 1 back in just to be able to use Karn to get it with the planar bridge. But I went ahead and took all the copies out to put in more planeswalkers. Now, the choices of planeswalkers I chose was mostly because they're the ones that I saw and thought about adding into my deck previously. But then I got a couple suggestions. Like Ashiok here, she pretty much wins games against Dredge, like right off the bat. So, she's a pretty easy add. The only downside is there are so many games where she's not very useful that kind of has a little bit of drawback to it. But, like you all know, if you have a deck with a lot of options in it, and you can tutor for them or, see them pass through your hand a couple times before the game's over, then you're doing pretty good. So, I was able to get Tron online here. And went ahead and cast the Chromatic Sphere. I'm just trying to find Oath of Nissa at this point in time. Or something that will give me, some kind of advantage here. And end up drawing into Nicol Bolas Planeswalker. Now, Nicol Bolas Planeswalker can't really do much here at this point. But like you all see, my opponent has a Ghost Quarter. And I think he might have held out here because he wanted to destroy my land whenever Silent Leonin Arbiter was out. Or he just didn't have the mana. Because Thalia here was making it to where non-creature spells cost 1 more to cast. And when I saw him not play a land here, I was like, okay, I'm in a pretty decent position here. And I drew into an Oath of Nissa. So at this point, it's just me playing a bunch of Planeswalkers. I chose to play the Forest here instead of the Cascading Cataracts. The reason why is if I did play the Cascading Cataracts, it actually makes it to where I have less mana available. Because it takes 5 mana to be able to use this. So I don't really count Cascading Cataracts as mana. It's just a source to change mana if I'm trying to get colored mana out. So I chose to play the Forest, then the Oath of Nissa, and I ended up getting Karn Great Creator as one of my choices, along with Karn Liberated, and a power plant. But I went ahead and chose the Karn Great Creator here because I wanted to stop my opponent from being able to use the Aether Veil. So I went ahead and casted the Veil here. And at this point now, I'm just trying to get ahead in the game. And knowing that my opponent has a bunch of creatures that, make it extremely difficult for me to play Tron or just play cards in general, I just wanted something that would be able to get rid of creatures. And Walking Ballista here does an extremely great job of that. So that's why I chose to go get him versus anything else. Then my opponent finally got a 3rd land here. And of course swung at Karn Great Creator to put him down to 1. Then he went ahead and played Leonin Arbiter. So next turn, I am completely expecting a land to get destroyed. But the goal is to, not to get to that point, right? So here I definitely prioritize playing Walking Ballista over anything else just to be able to get rid of the creatures. I think, let's see, Walking Ballista comes out at 4. And then I just start sniping creatures, leave Ballista at 2. Then I ended up playing a Chromatic Star just because Thali was no longer on the battlefield. And made it into a creature as well. Then I went ahead and passed the turn to my opponent. Now, let's see. He went ahead and destroyed his own land, I think. Yeah, he chose to destroy his own land. I think that was just to go get another plains. But then he also followed up with playing a Ghost Quarter. And Flicker Wisp is what was casted at this point. He tried to bounce my Ballista. So I used Ballista's counter to target Flicker Wisp to deal 1 damage to it, and then 1 damage to my opponent. And that basically killed the Walking Ballista. Now during my draw step, my opponent destroys my power plant, which is typically the perfect move to do with a power plant, especially going against someone who's playing Tron. Destroy one of those pieces of Tron lands. Fortunate for me, I have an expedition map in hand. And I'm kind of ahead in the game at this point, so it's pretty difficult for him to recover from this. Then I went ahead and, got a power plant with my expedition map. And now I go ahead and cast Nicol Bolas Planeswalker here and start sniping lands. And like y'all know, the main reason why I could cast Nicol Bolas is the Oath of Nissa here. And then I made my Chromatic Star into a creature just to attack with it. Start that, in this case, 19 turn clock. But yeah, that was game number 1. But like I said, my opponent's an extremely good Death and Taxes player. So, this being the 3rd game, and I was able to win it, I was pretty happy with that, especially since I took Doubling Seasons out of my deck and put in more, Planeswalkers with static abilities, which is pretty difficult to pull off in my book. But since it worked, definitely happy with it. Because, let's see, I had played another player using my Planeswalkers, or using this version of my deck, and I was able to win both games. So now returning to play against Fist, I was, a little bit excited to see that the changes worked all around, even though I might not be able to, make it work consistently every single time against someone who's playing Death and Taxes. Just because, it's Death and Taxes. So I chose to keep this hand here because I had 2 pieces of Tron. I had Karn Liberated to follow up for turn 3. Expedition map in hand, Golos in hand. So I'm looking pretty sweet here to play some pretty good games here. Opponent, plays 2 lands and then plays the Stony Silence. Now, for all the Tron players out there, this is probably one of the worst cards that we would ever see. This along with Blood Moon. But I was hoping that I would be able to play around it, so I kept going. Played a mine. And then, of course, since I have the extra mana open, I figured it's mana efficient to go ahead and, play all my artifacts. And let them sit there and look pretty for a while. Then my opponent played a Ghost Quarter. Wait, nope. Then they played Athalia and the Ghost Quarter. Now, after seeing those two things, I was thinking to myself, I hope he destroys my power plant. Because the goal would be for him to destroy my power plant, get me a basic land, so that way I don't have to rely on stars and spheres or cascading cataracts. But unfortunate for me, he chooses not to. Also, he just goes ahead and, keeps playing Eldrazi creatures just to make the death and taxes, a little bit more taxing on me. Because now he started the clock with his 3/3 here, and he has Thalia out. So that's 5 damage per turn. And here I definitely forgot about Thalia, and I thought to myself, yeah, you know what? I can go ahead and cast Karn here. And then after I tapped the mana, I realized that I couldn't because of Thalia. I don't know about you all, but for me, she's such an easy creature to overlook. But her effect is just so dominant. By the way, you all might have missed it like I did the first time. My opponent tapped 3 lands to go ahead and cast a Flicker Wisp. Then he targeted one of his lands with Flicker Wisp. That way it would come back onto the battlefield untapped. Some 1000 IQ plays right there. In this case, it was the Aether Hub. Then when it came around to my turn, I had nothing that I could do because I did not have the mana for it. Keeping me off Tron obviously puts Karn out. I'm 1 mana away from casting Golos. And I'm 1 mana away from casting Karn. I should say 2 mana away from casting Golos because of... Nope. Yeah, she only affects non-creature spells, so... If I had 5 mana, I would be able to cast Thalia, but I did not. Nah, you said you forgot about Thalia too a couple times. Hey man, Thalia definitely comes in pretty clutch. Let's see here. And I was hoping to, maybe get a land next turn, but then after getting dealt damage, that was game. Because now I'm down to 5 life. Fist has 3 creatures on the field here. And the most I could hope for is to be able to block with the Golos. So either ways, I'm taking lethal damage. Let's see, you boarded in Gideon's against me every time, and then it got stuck in my hand because of Thalia. Okay. Hey, at least I know that I'm not the only one being affected by Thalia here, who's trying to, cast Planeswalkers, so that's pretty nice. Alright, let's get this 3rd game up. Alright, so 3rd game, I'm on the draw again because I lost the 2nd game. When I saw this hand, I was thinking to myself, you know what? I might be able to keep it just because of the fact I have so many cantrips in my hand. Also, I have Oath of Nissa here. If I was going against someone who's playing Jund or something, I absolutely would not keep this because 1 mana hands are pretty risky. But at the same time, I was willing to risk this hand here because since I took out Doubling Seasons out of my deck and I have cheaper Planeswalkers, the value of Oath of Nissa pretty much skyrocket through the roof at this point. So I can't underestimate keeping a hand with Oath of Nissa in. And lucky for me here, look at this. Top deck to tower. Which, hey, it's lucky on my part. Now I get to cast both Oath of Nissa, end up getting a Nahiri. And I get to cast an expedition map. So, things are looking up for me here. Then Fist went ahead and casted Thalia to make everything just a little bit more expensive. And let's see which one I ended up casting. I think I ended up casting Iron Great Creator just because I did not want to have to deal with Thalia anymore. So I was willing to go ahead and get Walking Ballista for 1. That's just to kill Thalia because I won't say my deck is the most mana efficient out there, but having to pay 1 extra for things definitely sets me back a lot, especially since I play a lot of cantrips. So then Flicker Wisp targeting land again. Here I'm just trying to get ahead, playing more lands. I think which one I end up getting here. I end up getting a tower. The reason I got a tower is because I knew I could cast Golos and go get the Cascading Cataracts if I wanted to. But the absolute best play was to go cast Ugin, and Fist responded by using Path to Exile on his Flicker Wisp so he could get ahead on lands, which is the right move in my opinion. Then I went ahead and got something from my sideboard here. So now, since I'm ahead in the game a little bit, it was kind of a difficult decision because, hey, when you're winning, it's kind of hard to, win more, especially if you're playing a deck that seems to try to set the tempo of the game. But the best I could come up with was the console flagship. The reason being, when the flagship enters the battlefield, it does 3 damage to, let's see, is it a creature? Damage to target creature or planeswalker an opponent controls. So I could possibly, deal damage to the creature here. And this ability also goes off when it attacks. So when it enters the battlefield and when it attacks. So this should pretty much keep the battlefield pretty clean. So I figured that was the best one to go with, because since I took doubling seasons out of my deck, Planar Bridge being necessary to go get a doubling season, there's really no value in that anymore. So it just depends on the matchup. Alright, so here obviously I'm going to use Ugin to go ahead and kill his Eldrazi Displacer. And now I think I went ahead and casted Karn Liberating, just to start exiling lands. Then my opponent responded by playing Aven Mind Sensor, which, makes it extremely difficult to go ahead and search your library for something. Especially since you can only search the top 4 cards. Lucky for me though, I had Teferi Time Reveler here to bounce it back to his hand. Then I went ahead and passed turn. Alright, so next turn, like y'all can imagine, Aven Mind Sensor comes back again. And for me now, I'm pretty much cruising at this point. Like, I have almost everything that I need to, continuously stay ahead in this game. And I was able to ultimate Ugin the Spirit Dragon, which means that I could put 7 permanents into play. I don't even know which 7 permanents I chose. Pretty sure yep. Abilities going off everywhere. Things entering the battlefield. So I chose a bunch of lands and Ashiok, Flagship, Nahiri, and the Chromatic Star. Granted, I still had things in my hand that would give more options, like the Congress Creator here. And I had the Chromatic Star just so I could, filter through more cards. Alright, let's see. And that was game. So yeah, this was the third game against Fist. And I'm pretty pleased with the results, especially since I made changes to my deck. Oh, let's see. Let's kind of show what the deck looks like a little bit here. Alright, so this is what the deck looks like now. Obviously, Karn Liberated, Ugin the Spirit Dragons have been here since day one. Same for Emrakul here. The Nicol Bolas Planeswalker, definitely an addition that I decided to keep after, playing in League yesterday and not doing too well. But still, having Bolas Planeswalker here as an option is definitely something good. Yeah, I want to play some more games. I was just, going over a couple games that I played. Fistier is an opponent that I played against today, and he was extremely great to play against. So I just wanted to, record a video of that. And I figured if I'm going to be recording a video, I might as well go live. So, you said you're surprised that I don't have Ren in 6. I don't know. I did not think about adding Ren in 6. The reason why I don't think that I'll be able to utilize Ren in 6 effectively, I don't play enough fetch lands. I only play 17 lands and it's 2 forests, an interplanar beacon, cascading cataracts, and a blast zone. Ren in 6. So yeah, since I don't play enough fetch lands or anything, Ren in 6's value is not nearly as good in my opinion. But you all are right. You all are onto something here. I could potentially add Ren in 6 and Ghost Quarter in here just to be able to, do that ridiculous combo of destroying lands every turn. Is there a flex in your board? Any flex on my board? Yeah, I have things that I can get rid of if I need to. Like all these planeswalkers with static abilities I just added today. In my sideboard, I have absolutely nothing for land hate. The reason why is my deck tends to do pretty good against land hate. If I go against an opponent who plays Blood Moon, which I have in tournaments before, and I still win those games even with Blood Moon being out. So Blood Moon does not affect me negatively as much as it does other people. But I would say that them destroying lands is a thing that easily wins against this deck. But now I'm thinking with these cheaper planeswalkers, I should be able to get some value out of them since, I can cast them at a lower mana cost. So that's something that I'm just playing games and trying to figure out if it works. Also, besides Gideon, Teferi, and Ashiok, I added in Teferi Master of Time in here, just to have some interaction on my opponent's turn. Face a couple creatures out and draw some extra cards. Same thing for Hero of Dominaria. Like the Hero of Dominaria has been in the deck in the past, but since I wasn't doing the whole control theme, it didn't really quite fit right. But now that I'm making it to where I have to control the tempo of the game, he absolutely fits in perfectly. And I added in Sandra, Torch of Defiance. I was about to say Sandra the Flamecaller because that's the one I typically use. But I added in Torch of Defiance here. And so far, I think I've gotten one away from ultimating her before. Granted, my opponent scooped. But Sandra Torch of Defiance definitely works. Because I have Karn here that can go get whatever I need to protect my Planeswalkers. Then after that, they just have to sit there and eventually they'll get to ultimate. I think the most broken one that I've seen though is I played the Karn Liberated, exiled something that my opponent had, and the next turn I followed that up with playing Nicol Bolas Dragon God. And like you all can imagine, if I use Dragon God's ability to do the +4 and have my opponent exile something from my opponent's hand, Nicol Bolas ultimates the next turn. So only being out on the battlefield for one turn, Bolas was still able to ultimate. Yes, I decided to take Jace out. The reason why I took Jace out is he does not have very much interaction with my opponent's permanents. Like, he can make it to where creatures get -1, -0 if they attack me, or a Planeswalker I control. He can also help me draw 3 cards, or reveal 3 cards, and my opponent chooses 2 piles. I put 1 pile into my hand, 1 at the bottom of my library. Or the -8 ability lets me cast a card from my library and my opponent's library. But the downside is he takes 4 turns to ultimate. And besides making creatures just a little bit weaker when they attack me, I chose to take him out. Okay. Jace Mind Sculptor. Alright, let's see. Card folder. Where are you at? Quite honestly, I am always looking for options out there. Alright, so I will probably definitely buy a copy of Jace Mind Sculptor. But yeah, thank you for the suggestion. Okay, so being able to dig and bounce creatures is pretty amazing. That and the Mind Sculptor has an ultimate ability as well. So yeah, I appreciate you giving me that suggestion. By the way, how do you say your name? Is it Malan? Because I know, being from Jamaica, I would say Malan. Or is it Manlan? Malan? Malan? I don't know. But let's see. Okay, the name is pronounced Malin. Okay. Thank you for letting me know that. And I appreciate your suggestion. And it makes perfect sense. I don't own the Mind Sculptor in real life, so because I don't own it in real life, I tend to not play Planeswalkers that I don't own. Because I have never really been able to use them to see their abilities. Okay, I gotcha. Alright, so yeah. Alright, I should probably stop recording this video.